So, I mean, a lot of weeks we come on here and we're like, well, there's no way racing can make itself look even sillier than it did in the previous mess. And yet, lo and behold, yet time and time again, racing manages to make itself look like even less of a serious sport. And it's even more magnified when it happens at Saratoga. So this past weekend on Saturday, in the 12th race of the day, I'm sure you've heard by now, but the gate was placed at the wrong starting position. The race was supposed to be a mile and an eighth on the inner turf, and they ended up running it at a mile and a 16th. And this is like, you imagine the Olympics, and it was a 100-meter dash, and then they run the race, and then the announcers come on, and they're like, oh, shit, that was 150 meters. What do we do? What do we do? Well, we can't do anything about it now. It's already in the record books. We can't rerun the race or anything like that. And this was just like so inexcusable to happen once. But, John, this has happened multiple times. This happened last May when they had the 2-year-old race that was supposed to be running 5.5 furlongs and was run at 5 furlongs. It happened in 2018 before that. A couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, they had horses break out of the wrong gate at Saratoga. They juxtaposed the gates incorrectly. And it's maddening, John, because we come on here every single week trying to be advocates for the sport, and so many other people are on television and writing articles and promoting the game and marketing the game, and the people in charge of running the races can't even be bothered to get the fucking distance of the race correct. Like, it just makes you feel like, why am I banging my head against the wall trying to do better for this game when the people who actually are in charge, are at the levers, could not care less, it seems. And, ultimately this falls to the stewards. They are the last line of defense for this kind of thing. And the 3 stewards have a lot to answer for. Like, they put out, Andy Serling put out a video with them the other day where they had like a pat, like 20-second explanation. And I thought that was way, inadequate. I think, I think that there should be like a press conference or a live Q&A or something, not 2 guys or 3 guys reading a statement that really, like, the apology, such as it was pretty weak. And I don't know, John, like, how many other sports would you find where there's just this kind of unacceptable incompetence happens on a regular basis?
Joe, I'm torn, and I'm torn between saying, believe it or not, the fact that they had a quote unquote kind of press conference and read a statement and apologized is an advance for our industry. Okay. It's a huge step forward for us as far as, what's transparent, but for wagering, for a sport that we wager on and that people put money into, and that is a quote unquote serious sport. You can't have these, what I would call one-off mistakes that are happening too often. There's got to be some kind of quality control involved. And I know that, they say, well, there's the state stewards and there's a gate crew and there's the handlers of the horses that are back there. Somebody should have been like, guys, I think we're off a little bit. And it wasn't like it was 5 feet where you'd say, all right, you know what? Maybe there was like a divot in the track and they didn't want the tractor to go over it. So they moved it a little bit, but they angled it to account for, I mean, there's all kinds of calculations that can go on. If it's a couple feet either way, nobody was, but this is egregious as far as I'm concerned with the distance. Now, I think the bigger question, Joe, is how do we fix this issue? And if the stewards are accountable, who's kind of monitoring the monitors, to take a page out of the very famous Will Smith movie that I can't remember the name of at this moment. But basically it's like, all right, if these guys are in charge, then who's double checking to make sure that things that you think would be so straightforward and simple, like, oh, let's make sure that the horses go in the right starting gate, the right stalls in the starting gate, I should say. Or let's make sure that all the horses are standing firm before they open the latch. Or, oh, I don't know, maybe we should make sure that the starting gate itself is in the right place. Like, these are all things that I think would be natural duties over the course of, every single race, and should be, should have some kind of a system in place, again, for quality control. Because you notice, Joe, that The corgi races were run at the right distance.
Yeah. Did they use G-Max for that, or were they hand timing that race?
I don't know. All I know is there was a great meme that I saw where it was the mother holding the adorned child in the swimming pool, and it said corgi races, and then like the kid who's drowning was like racing basically, and then of course the dead skeleton on the bottom of the pool was of course, as always, the betters, because they always get shafted in the end. I don't know if you can't refund the money. You can't. It's not dissimilar in that sense to like when a horse is DQ'd out of a race for a drug test, for a drug positive or an overage, and then you say, well, everyone should have their money back. You can't. There's no way you can do that. I mean, they couldn't do that for the Derby. They're not doing that for the for an undercard race at Saratoga. But Bill Finley wrote a great article. I thought a great op-ed basically in Sunday's TDN about who holds the stewards accountable. And I actually texted Bill and said, I really liked what you had to write in your op-ed piece, because he was pretty strong. He was like, hey, the New York Gaming Commissioners, the stewards at Saratoga, particularly the one in charge, Baeza Jr., rules with an iron fist and basically is draconian in the exact words, from Bill, because I don't know what draconian meant before I looked it up, but draconian in doling out his fines and basically kind of like at his own discretion. So, I encourage everyone to read it and come to their own conclusion. But yeah, Joe, this was a big kerfuffle.
Yeah, and and I agree with Bill that like at least the other two, because Baeza was not on that video with Andy Serling. At least the other two guys had the guts to sit there and show their faces. Like, yeah, I think it should have been longer and a little bit more detailed than what they did. But at least they showed up and actually said something. Baeza was nowhere to be found, and he's the New York State Gaming Commission steward,
right?
And the Gaming Commission is. I think it's kind of absent a lot of times when it comes to these rulings. And so that tracks. And, Bill made a good point that like all these other like minor, tiny infractions and mistakes, he finds them the maximum amount of money, like Gary Contessa, the clocker, like these guys that are just doing their job. And a lot of times, in the Gary Contessa case, it was like the new rule hadn't been posted to the website yet. And he was just supposed to know it in terms of running a horse out of town after 30 days. And it's like, it's such hypocrisy and such incompetence. And the thing that was stunning to me was like, it's not just the stewards. Like, yes, they have the ultimate responsibility. How many people were involved in the running of this race?
That's what I'm saying.
And none of them were like, like none of the jockeys, none of the outriders, none of the like nobody that was involved in the running of this race thought to say, I don't think the gate position seems right. And I get it, like it's the 12th race, the end of a long day, but like this is the one thing. And they said, and they were not like very clear about what they're going to be doing to make sure this doesn't happen. But I would assume now it's going to be like someone from the gate crew calls up to the steward's booth with like 3 minutes to post, confirms the distance and the surface, which why the fuck wasn't that happening this whole time to have multiple layers of confirmation before you run a race? I just like, I hate being staggered by the incompetence of this industry. And especially like we said, at the premier meet of the entire country, like this is the most popular, most well-attended meet that we have in America. And stuff like this happens seemingly on a regular basis. And I don't know, man, like yeah, you're right. You can't give the money back, but got to do something, man. You got to like seed a pick 5 pool or a pick 6 pool or something like that. Give people rebates on Naira bets or something like 10 times rebates. Like you got to do something better than get up there and give a half-assed apology, especially when this is not the first time this happened. Like in the last 15 calendar months, this has happened twice. It shouldn't happen ever. Like maybe once a century this should happen. It's happened twice in 15 months, Johnny. You got to do better than just say, oops, our bad.
Yeah. And again, I think that it is a step forward for the industry, the fact that they actually came on and even if it was to a limited group of journalists and at least, read a statement and say, hey, we screwed up. Because a lot of times in the past, that wasn't even the case. It was just like swept under the rug and like nothing to see here. Joe, there's, we run a lot in Woodbine. And I mentioned to Mark Cassie a couple of years ago, I was like, how come when they're going into the gate, one of the gate crew yells, "Last one," when the last one's going, and he said, well, because a couple of years prior to that, a race went off and there was a horse that was still behind the gate, and the race actually went off, and people got all up in arms. Well, in Canada, when shit like that happens, you know what they did? They fixed the problem. They actually they put in a condition. You can't foresee all of the issues that are going to occur, but to make sure that the gate crew and the starter knows that there's one horse left, or that this is the last one to go in, they actually have the gate crew yell "last one," so that way everybody knows, including the fans that are watching at home. Okay, I better sit up and take notice because this is the last horse is going to the gate. That's one thing, but to be a 16th of a mile difference in a race, that's huge. That's half a furlong, Joe. If a horse won by half a furlong, we'd be calling him Secretariat, for God's sake.
Well, and if you watch how the race unfolded,
right.
The 10, Charles J, was coming.
Yeah.
And he was at the very least, he was going to get up for second if that race was a mile and eighth. Right. He galloped out past the winner, so you could argue that he was going to win the race. So imagine you were live single to the 10 in the pick 6,
right,
or the pick 5, or had $1,000 to win on him or something. You straight up got your money robbed from you. And that's not even talking about the trainer like Joseph Lee, who does not have a lot of horses,
right,
and he does a good job with the minimal amount of horses that he has. But this is how many other chances is he going to have to win a Saratoga maiden special weight this summer? This is probably one of the very few chances, and he had that ripped away from him. And I don't know, it's just there should be some kind of recourse for the bettors and for the connections of the horse that this happened, because, as you mentioned, this isn't a minor screw up. It's one thing, and we can talk about this too, Zulu Kingdom DQ 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
Ridiculous.
That was a joke. And that helped me because I liked the two in that race. But that was embarrassing. There was no way you could reasonably argue that he was the one that caused the interference in that race. But at least in that case, that's a judgment call.
Right.
And you can disagree all you want with the judgment call. And I do. And I think the vast majority of people do. But it's not as if they ran the race at the wrong distance.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not as if they ran that race at a mile and a half instead of a mile. You at least can disagree with the judgment call all you want, but it's, at least the parameters of the race were correct. And that's the bare minimum that we should expect from the stewards. And, Bill's question is correct. What happens? What possible blowback could there be to find new stewards?
Right.
Because these things have happened way too often. And it's just, apologize, turn the page, and hope we don't screw it up next time. That seems to be the protocol right now. But, like I was saying, I hope that they have much better processes in place to make sure this never happens again, because it's already happened way too many times. And again, this is what's so frustrating, is when we can't even get the basic running of the race correct, what chance do we ever have to compete with some of the other sports out there where this would never happen in a million years? We're up shit's creek without a paddle if we can't even do this right.